Being selected for a role is something that most of us have experienced at some time or another. As children, we may have been chosen for a school team, be it netball or football, or maybe to act in a play. And as we grow older, the choice may have far-reaching effects, being selected for college or university, or even finding a new job. Even without the stresses of competition, the process often brings with it feelings of anxiety. Will we be able to do what is required? Do we have the talents, the skills, or the potential to fulfill the expectation of others, or even ourselves? And I think there's this moment of truth when we are asked to take on something new. Does it lead us to ask many questions and to consider the implications of commitment? 96 years ago, when Princess Elizabeth was born, she was not expected to be queen, but life changes and she took on the vocation, watching carefully what her father did. As we know, 70 years ago, life changed for Elizabeth, and that moment of truth came as she was called to take on something new. Her vocation changed. And in this, her 70th year of her reign, she has lived up to the promise of a life of service to others through the office of the crown. Archbishop Justin described her as one with a sense of self-acceptance. She doesn't question who or what she is. The Archbishop goes on to describe the Queen's Christian faith as the rock on which she stands. In Sunday's Gospel, Peter, an ordinary fisherman who receives that moment of truth, if you like, that personal commission from Jesus. It is Peter who is chosen to undertake a new role, to catch people instead of fish. Peter's reaction reveals his potential for the task which lies ahead of him. When Jesus tells this fisherman, who knows a thing or two about fishing, to put out into the deep water and try again for a catch that has eluded him all night, despite his obvious doubts, Peter does it. And I think you can sense Peter's confusion and doubt when he says, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." Yet Jesus gives him a job to do, points him to his vocation. I think Peter's response to the power of God, glimpsed yet not quite understood in Jesus' actions, is something shared with many. Prophets and leaders alike are often reluctant to answer God's call because they do not feel worthy of the task. In confessing his sinfulness, his unsuitability even, Peter clearly shows an awareness of God. He thinks he's not up to the job. Still, this does not put Jesus off, for in Peter's honesty and humility, there is an openness to the transformative action of God. For God already knows us better than we know ourselves. There's nothing about us that can surprise or change God's mind about us. The divine mind is clear and unchanging. God loves us and delights in us. Having made and fashioned us through our nature and nurture, God has a task for us, something that will make each of us fulfilled. Perhaps you already know what that is. Perhaps you have an inkling. Perhaps you have absolutely no idea. Well, look to your gifts. Look to what attracts you and gives you joy. And above all, spend time with God in prayer. As the season of Lent approaches, perhaps it's a good time for us to consider the renewal of our commitment to the path of discipleship. What is being asked of us? that same openness to God, remembering the understanding and love of God who works with us to overcome our failings. Trust in the discernment of God who is with us all in the ordinary situations of life and, despite our doubts, transforms them by his presence. Do not be afraid, Jesus says to us today, for I know and love you, and I have a job for you to do.